If you enjoy heartwarming tales of families that stand by each other through thick and thin, showing unconditional care for every member, this story may not be for you. The Willoughby family has a different and unique narrative, secluded from the modern world in their old-fashioned home, a true relic of tradition, creativity, and courage passed down through generations, much like their distinctive facial hair. Despite their love for each other, the couple that makes up the current generation cannot stand the presence of their own children. Their firstborn, Tim, entered the world under unfortunate circumstances, born to parents who seemed to have no love left for him. Along with taking care of himself, Tim also finds himself responsible for his younger sister, Jane, who loves singing, and the twin brothers, Barnaby and Barnaby, both quirky geniuses who enjoy inventing together. Neglected by their parents, the Willoughby kids lead an unfortunate life devoid of parental love and care. They are denied education and the opportunity to pursue their passions. Basic necessities like food and clothes are often scarce, and they have to resort to wearing a sweater when it's cold. One night, the siblings realize they have to do something about their dire dinner situation. Tim, out of desperation, approaches his selfish parents for food, but they dismiss his pleas. While being scolded by his parents, Jane takes matters into her own hands and sneaks off to snatch some meatloaf. Tim becomes the scapegoat and is unjustly thrown into a dark coal bin, a punishment he has endured many times before merely for asking for the basic necessities of life. Sitting on a pile of coal in the darkness, he finds solace in the family album, reminiscing about the old Willoughbys who were once great scientists, philosophers, and, most importantly, had the cherished tradition of eating together as a family. The Willoughbys' already challenging life takes a turn for the worse when a stranger leaves a mysterious box at their doorstep. Intrigued, the Barnaby twins and Jane sneak out to investigate the contents of the box, with Jane imagining it might hold a fantastical creature like those in her beloved books. However, they discover something more troublesome, a crying baby girl. Knowing their parents' distaste for children and the consequences they might face, Tim urgently advises Jane to get rid of the baby as quickly as possible, but she hesitates. As they continue to argue, the baby managed to slip into the corridor, creating chaos throughout the house. Crawling into the living area, the parents were infuriated to see the baby, and in their fury, they decided on a cruel punishment for the Willoughby kids. They were to be kicked out of the house, forbidden from returning until they got rid of the baby. Jane, drawing inspiration from her countless fantasy books, believed in finding the perfect home for the baby at the other end of the rainbow. This quest was daunting for the Willoughbys, who had never stepped outside their home before. Crossing roads was a struggle, causing multiple accidents, but they persevered and eventually reached what they believed to be the end of the rainbow. Unfortunately, it was merely colorful smoke billowing from a candy factory. Unaware of the danger, they entered the factory's lawn and left the baby on the doorstep. Jane decided to name the child Ruth, a poignant reminder of the ruthless abandonment they had carried out. In the midst of their adventure, Jane couldn't help but dream of the wonderful life Ruth might have in the factory. She wished they could be orphans too and find a better home. Excitedly, she shared this idea with Tim, who loved the thought. The Willoughbys, determined to execute their plan, devised a cunning strategy. They created a fake adventure brochure, combining dangerous locations like boiling volcanoes, acidic rivers, and unclimbable mountains into an adventure map. Tim sent this deceptive brochure to their parents, who had never experienced such adventures and craved some time away from their children. Unaware of the deception, the parents fell into the trap. Concerned that the kids might destroy the house, the parents decided to hire a nanny. The Willoughby kids were overjoyed that their plan had succeeded. Their parents were gone, leaving them as orphans with newfound freedom to do as they pleased. They excitedly ran around the house, reveling in the freedom to touch and play with things their parents had always forbidden. Climbing onto the bed, a first-time experience, they basked in the fun. However, the excitement was short-lived as hunger struck. Taking charge of the house, Tim assured his siblings of a hearty meal. Setting up the dining table, he unfortunately found there was no food in the house and had to resort to an old, spoiled lobster. Jane and the Barnaby twins refused to eat the unappetizing lobster and decided to search for food themselves. Tim, concerned for their safety, warned them about the dangers outside and tried to dissuade them. Just then, Linda, the nanny, arrived. She appeared friendly and quickly bonded with Jane, engaging in singing and fixing her hair. Linda also prepared fresh meals for the children, all of whom seemed to like her except for Tim. Due to his traumatic childhood, Tim found it hard to trust others easily. Linda's attempts to assist him with eating were met with resistance, and in a moment of frustration, he pushed the food away, accidentally hitting Linda's face. In response, Linda put Tim on a timeout. The Willoughbys were surprised that this time, he wasn't sent to the coal bin as he usually was. When Linda learned about the coal bin, she couldn't believe that parents would subject their children to such harsh treatment. Jane, influenced by Linda's caring nature, confessed about Ruth, and Linda grew concerned. She rushed to the candy factory, where the owner, Commander Melanov, demanded they leave immediately. However, Linda was determined to find Ruth and refused to leave without her. Inside the factory, they discovered Ruth roaming around and eating an unhealthy amount of candy. Melanov tried to turn off the machines to prevent any harm to Ruth, but she almost fell into the grinding machine. Luckily, Linda saved her just in time. Linda fed Ruth some porridge and learned about Melanov's attachment to the adorable baby. He initially intended to call the orphanage, but he had grown fond of Ruth and wanted to raise her himself. The candy factory seemed like the perfect home for Ruth. With Linda's reassurance and their mission accomplished, the Willoughbys and Linda decided to leave the candy factory, content that Ruth was in good hands with Melanov. On their way back home, Tim shares some of his candy with Linda and expresses his gratitude, realizing that there are still good people in the world. When they arrive home, Linda receives a message from the Willoughbys' parents, indicating that they have survived half of their adventures but have run out of money to fund their trip. They've decided to sell the house and instruct Orlando to get rid of the children. Curious and suspicious, Tim steals Linda's phone and shows the message to his siblings. They assume that Linda is somehow involved with their parents' plans and feel the need to protect themselves. That evening, the company agent puts up the for sale sign on the house, leaving the Willoughbys unable to sleep. They decide to prepare traps to scare away potential buyers. Before doing so, Tim makes another call, this time to the orphanage services, lodging a complaint against Linda. The next morning, several buyers come to see the house, but the Willoughbys have surprises in store for them. The house is rigged with electric wires on the doorknobs, random punches coming out of the wall, and sinking holes in the ground, all leading to the coal bin for the unfortunate buyers. However, one particular family seems unscathed by the traps. This seemingly perfect family loves each other so much that nothing frightens them away. The Willoughbys are about to give up hope when they notice the buyer's family running away from the library in terror. Curious, the Willoughbys investigate and find the library transformed into a haunted room with numerous candles, suddenly blown out all at once. To their surprise, Linda appears, disguised as a scary monster. She had intended to help the kids scare away the buyers, but now she feels deceived by the Willoughbys. The Willoughbys apologize for their behavior and hug Linda, showing their true remorse. Unfortunately, the orphanage services break into the house, having received Tim's report. Linda tries to run away with the children, but the officers surround them. Linda's past involvement with the orphanage is revealed, as she was once an orphan herself but had run away with the desire to help others. After learning about the complaint, Linda runs away in tears, and the children are taken back to the orphanage. They eventually get adopted by different families. The Barnaby twins are placed with a modern family that keeps them busy on the internet, stifling their creativity. Jane is given to a family that appreciates peace and music, but she has lost her own passion for singing. As for Tim, he gets adopted by several families, but he continues to run away in search of his true home. When he finally returns to check on his house, he finds it has already been demolished. The orphanage services imprison Tim, and he deeply regrets his impulsive decisions. Meanwhile, Linda is consumed by sorrow and decides to leave the city. Before she departs, she discovers a cat alongside Tim's hat. Overwhelmed by emotions, she sneaks into the orphanage to rescue Tim. They reconcile and escape together, but the service officers continue to pursue them relentlessly, vowing to apprehend them until the Willoughbys' parents return. With a heavy heart, Tim suggests bringing back their parents, even though they have been so insensitive. Borrowing Melanov's factory, they construct an airship based on the Barnaby twins' design. Before setting off, Linda prepares some oats, and with Melanov and Ruth's help, they portray a semblance of a perfect family. However, the Willoughbys do not want to disrupt their happiness, so they decide to leave on their own. Meanwhile, their parents climb up the Alps and freeze due to the bone-chilling wind. The Willoughbys recognize their mother's knitting yarn rolling down the mountain and follow it to find their frozen parents. Using heaters and lights, the innocent siblings successfully warm up their parents. They confess their actions and ask their parents to come back with them. They may not be a perfect family, but they are still a family. However, their selfish parents push them away and ride off on the airship, leaving their children to face the freezing winds alone. As the harsh winds freeze everything, Jane decides to sing her last song, expressing her love for her siblings. The Willoughbys hug each other, bracing for the tragic end together. But wait, the story doesn't end in such despair. The Willoughbys are in luck as Linda and Melanov come to their rescue. They want to welcome the Willoughby kids into their own family. The children couldn't ask for more. Finally, they have found the warm, loving home they have always yearned for. As for their biological parents, they meet a grim fate as they fall into the ocean and are consumed by sharks. Linda applies for adoption and officially becomes the legal parent of the Willoughby family. The story beautifully conveys that family is not solely about blood relations. It's about the love and care we give to those we hold dear, even if they were once strangers. The power of emotional connections lies in the simple things, like a hug or a kind word, which can make all the difference in the world. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more interesting movies.